I wanted to take up arms and go and fight the apartheid system.
As a commander and part of the army, the objective that received from the commander-in-chief was to fight against the system. I personally said many times, if I die, there is always somebody else to pick up my gun to continue fighting until we win against the colonial.
Fighting against dictatorship, fighting for democracy, fighting for human rights.
The objective was not only to unite Mozambicans, were to unite all the colonized people.
Changes which are to come can only come as a result of a program worked out by black people. And for black people to be able to work out a program, they need to defeat the one main element in politics which was working against them, and this was a psychological feeling of inferiority.
Politics was that when I saw that on the Steve Biko case that he was killed by the apartheid regime, it's when I became to be conscious that something was not going right in South Africa. White South Africans, the apartheid regime actually was killing our people. I was convinced that taking up arms cannot only be taking up a gun, but it could be furthering your studies as a young person. And then from there you can take up arms later. In fact, that's what the African National Congress was advocating, that young people should start by going to school, study, and then later go and take up arms and go and face the apartheid regime back home. My father was also involved in politics. So what happened was that I had to continue with my studies in Swaziland, and the Swaziland government denied me an opportunity to continue with my matric. So my father, together with the ANC, arranged that I should go and study overseas. So I was taken to Mozambique.
Even in that early age, or to 6 or 7 years of age, almost 8, I could feel the bad conditions of life in which we were living, because in Mozambique there was apartheid. During the period of the secondary school, I joined what we called the nucleus. It was an association of the black students. When you speak about democracy in Mozambique, we heard people speaking about democracy. What it was, we could not know, because even Portugal didn't have democracy. We were colonized by a fascist government, undemocratic, by a dictatorship.
At long last, the battle has ended.
In that time, there was a very sharp division between what were called the citizens, the Portuguese, and what was called indigenous. The indigenous, it may sound to you as a good way of saying those who were born there, but for the Portuguese was something to say the uncivilized, like, well, if you would hear in South Africa someone say the nigger. So that was the connotation of the indigenous. There was an intensity of discussion about the political situation in Mozambique. Some of us did not know that we were discussing politics. We were just discussing our fate. But we were discussing human rights without knowing it. We were discussing the right for self-determination without knowing it, and so on.
Mas depois, a partir de DGS, soube que eu era membro do Partido Frelimo.
In other words, the Secret Service of Portuguese government discovered that I was member of Frelimo.
Estava para ser preso em fevereiro de 63.
I was about to be imprisoned in February 63.
Fugi,
I ran away.
abandonei o país. Não fugi, não, saí do país.
I didn't run away, but just left the country.
Então fui para Dar es Salaam para poder me preparar
To prepare myself
a fim de se confrontar com os portugueses.
in order to fight against the Portuguese.
Assim, em 1963, junto do Samora Moisés Machel,
Together with Samora Machel,
fui o segundo grupo para treinar na Argélia.
I was part of the second group that trained in Algeria.
Felizmente, por causa da nossa amizade entre Moçambique e África do Sul, o ANC e a Frelimo, no nosso grupo tivemos 6 companheiros do ANC.
Fortunately, because of the friendship between Frelimo and ANC, in our group we had 6 members of ANC.
Portanto, esses companheiros, como o ANC ainda não estava preparado para iniciar a guerra, eles estiveram camuflados como se fossem moçambicanos.
Unfortunately, at the time, ANC was not prepared to go into war, so they were camouflaged as part of Frelimo members.
Treinaram conosco, tivemos companheiro do ANC chamado Castro, um homem muito forte, muito decisivo, muito exemplar.
Man, an example one, that trained with us.
Acabaram os treinos, eu fui indigitado para ser como o primeiro comandante da província de Cabo Delgado.
When we finished the training, we came back to the country, and I was the first commander of Cabo Delgado province.
Samora Moisés Machel levou-nos de Congo, onde foi o nosso primeiro centro na Tanzânia,
Samora Machel has moved us from Congo, in Tanzania,
até Dar es Salaam.
to Dar es Salaam.
E dali o presidente Eduardo Mondlane disse: vamos para Moçambique iniciar a guerra.
And then the president of Frelimo, Eduardo Mondlane, at the time advised us to move to Mozambique, command us to move to Mozambique and initiate the war.
E o Raimundo Paixonapa é comandante.
And Raimundo Paixonapa, general, is the commander.
O vosso alvo é o sistema colonial.
He said that your target is the colonial system.
Não é português porque é branco, não é sistema colonial.
Portuguese because they are white. It's the system.
Some would give more emphasis to the color to define the enemy. In Frelimo, we're saying colonialism has got no color. Maybe we were influenced a bit by Edward Mondlane because he had a white wife, an American wife, a white. So his philosophy would be that of a fight against a system. But that was not the fundamental reason. It's not that he had a white wife. It's that he was in the United States of America, and he had been in South Africa where people were fighting for equality. So he would hate that we fight for equality, but at the same time putting the other race as an enemy just because of their color. The leadership of the South African movements would accept that there are non-blacks who embrace their cause. That's how we find names like George Love, Ruth First, and the others whom I have known in Dar es Salaam who were whites who joined the ANC. But we would not find many in the PAC who embraced, who were open to work with the whites. So the emphasis was, those are devils. So the color counted a lot in the definition of the enemy.
Let me explain this situation.
Eu pertenci a movimento de libertação antes da formação da Frelimo.
I belong to a movement, freedom movement, before Frelimo.
Frelimo foi formado por 3 movimentos de libertação.
Frelimo was founded from 3 different movements.
Udenamo,
Unami,
e Manu.
and Manu.
E eu pertencia a Unami.
And I belong to Unami.
Então, com a fusão desses 3 movimentos para formar a Frelimo,
The join of these 3 movements that found Frelimo,
desse movimento,
the members of those movements
membros da Frente de Libertação.
became the members of Frelimo.
Não, Renamo foi depois da independência.
Renamo was after independence,
E formado por sul-africanos.
and it was founded and funded by South African apartheid.
Havia Coremo.
There was a party called Coremo,
E outros partidos estavam em Cairo.
and there was other parties in Cairo.
Mas o movimento que estava efetivamente a lutar era Frelimo.
But the movement that was effectively fighting for independence was Frelimo.
Todos os outros estavam, tirando a Coremo que estava em Lusaka. mas
Except
todos os outros
Coremo that
estavam
was in Lusaka,
em
all the
Cairo,
others
longe
were
de Moçambique.
far away in Cairo, far away from Mozambique.
Como eu estava a dizer que a Frelimo fundada em setembro de 1962.
As I was saying, Frelimo was founded in September 62.
Definiu tarefas logo a ser executadas.
Different roles were defined at the time.
Primeira coisa, aprovou o estatuto da Frelimo.
That the constitution of Frelimo was approved.
Definir o que era Frelimo
It was defined what Frelimo
e os objetivos da Frelimo.
and what is its objective,
Tarefas e missões da Frelimo que devia cumprir.
roles and responsibilities.
Imediatos, a médio e a longo prazo.
Short, medium and long term.
Primeira tarefa era de unir o povo moçambicano que estava dividido.
The first one was to unite Mozambicans that were divided.
Estávamos divididos em tribos, em regiões, estávamos
Tribes,
divididos.
regional,
Extrato social, na altura. E a primeira coisa era unir, unidade. E depois, essa unidade para quê? É para lutar para a libertação de Moçambique, conquista da independência total e completa em Moçambique.
One of our objectives, other than all the differences, were to fight for a complete independence of Mozambique.
3 movimentos.
The 3 movements,
Manu,
Mano,
com sede em Tanganyika.
which has its headquarters in Tanganyika,
Udenamo,
Udenamo,
sede em Bulawayo.
which is headquartered in Bulawayo,
E Unami,
and Unami,
sede em Blantyre, Malawi.
headquartered in Blantyre.
E todos esses estavam motivados, organizados para lutar Moçambique, para Moçambique, libertar Moçambique,
Motivated and organized to fight,
mas divididos,
but individually,
porque os colonos tinham nos dividido.
because the colonial power had divided us.
The ANC decided to send all the students that were coming out from the country to other countries. So the first country that we were sent to was Nigeria, Cuba. In fact, in Cuba, we were such a huge group. We were about 100 students that were sent there. So, yeah. And some others were sent to GDR, which is we used to call German Democratic Republic. Some were sent to Russia. Some were sent to Hungary. That is the Eastern Bloc, actually, because we, as the ANC, we never had relations with the capitalist world. So the ANC preferred to send the students to the Eastern Bloc, to the socialist countries.
Nós, relações com países africanos, tínhamos relações muito íntimas.
The relationship with African neighboring countries was very strong. Basically with Tanganyika first, and Zambia. Malawi was also in at the beginning, but then they changed. Actually brought some challenges to our freedom fighting.
A partir de Malawi, à frente de Zambésia e de Tete, tivemos de encerrar temporariamente.
And this caused a strong impact on the front lines that had been created in Tete, from Tete and Zambésia.
Da Argélia, onde nós iniciamos a preparar os nossos guerrilheiros.
But we also had assistance from Algeria, where we start training our army people. We also had a relationship with Egypt. And in general view, we also had the help of the African Union today. Previously it was African United Organization.
Nós tivemos boas relações sempre.
We always had a very good relationship with the ANC.
Até chegarmos na altura
There was a time
em que formamos uma organização
that we put together an organization, informal organization,
de movimentos genuínos de libertação nacional.
in which that we put together the genuine movements of liberation.
A PGC, CPLP, PGC,
PAIGC,
MPLA,
MPLA,
ANC,
ANC,
ZAPO,
ZAPO,
Frelimo.
and Frelimo.
E mais movimento Comoros.
And there was another movement called Comoros. It has been a long time, but I don't remember, but that's the name.
Talvez fosse uma coisa muito arrojada, mas a gente sentia que éramos genuínos libertadores de Moçambique.
We thought, maybe we might think that we're overwhelmed, but we thought that we were genuine movements of liberation.
E desencorajar cisões.
And that was aimed for togetherness, just to avoid that people could cease or break apart in different countries. Sorry, desculpa. There were some movements that we thought that we were not genuine.
SWAPO era genuíno, mas SWANO já não era.
SWAPO was genuine, but SWANO was not.
MPLA era genuíno,
MPLA was genuine. What comes from? UNITA was not.
ZAPO era genuíno, ZANO não era.
ZAPO was genuine, but ZANO was not.
A gente tornar uma força unida ao nosso inimigo.
That was to create a united force against our enemies.
And so we were in the same, literally the same camp with the ANC. So it was just a wire which was demarcating to say this size ANC, this size is Frelimo. And the same year we received our comrades from SWAPO. And those comrades from SWAPO even didn't have a wire. They just had some tents in the same camp as we were. So that's where we started singing for Mandela, singing for Walter Sisulu, and many songs and slogans changing and so on, where they're playing football and things like. That's where we met, for instance, if I say this, maybe you will not know who is Joe More. You don't know who is Joe More. It was Modisi, the first Minister of Defense, Joe Modisi. He was using the war name Joe More. That's where we met Ambrose Makiwana, and Jack Ngamis or something like that, and many other, Jele, and many others. So it was a uniting ground at the grassroots, while in Dar es Salaam, at the level of leadership also, there were exchanges, because the office of the ANC was just in front of ours. Across the street, then you are at the ANC office. PAC were a bit far from us, but in the same town, Zapo and Zano, they were also around there.
Primeira lição que recebemos do Samora Moisés Machado, fizemos uma pergunta. Viemos na Argélia fazer o quê?
While we were at Algerian training, the first thing we asked ourselves was, what were we there for?
A resposta foi, viemos aprender como libertar Moçambique.
The answer was, we came to learn how to liberate Mozambique.
Como português não conseguimos dar independência como os outros países africanos, então temos que usar armas.
As Portuguese government was not willing to liberate and give us independence, we had to get all of the arms.
Então perguntamos quem é o nosso inimigo.
So we asked ourselves, who is our enemy?
Contra quem lutamos?
Who are we fighting against?
E por que estamos a lutar?
And why are we fighting?
Então dissemos, o nosso inimigo é o sistema colonial.
So the answer was, our enemy is a colonial system.
Essa foi a definição da Frente de Libertação de Moçambique.
That was the definition of Frelimo.
We didn't have in Mozambique a reference point for democracy. When you speak about democracy in Mozambique, we heard people speaking about democracy. What it was, we could not know, because even Portugal didn't have democracy. We were colonized by a fascist government, undemocratic, by a dictatorship. So from the outset, all our endeavors to be ourselves, to be free, to be people, were equal to fighting against dictatorship, fighting for democracy, fighting for human rights.
After independence, we had the issue of apartheid. Mozambique wouldn't feel free.
Enquanto a África do Sul estivesse ainda sob o regime da apartheid.
Under the apartheid government.
We were fighting against the construction of Kaborabasa. It was meant to supply electricity to the apartheid regime and not to develop Mozambique.
The apartheid and even the colonial powers that left, they did not leave here with clean heart. So we know that they can still disturb us. So getting together, we can always fight about any chance of anything coming back. And let's make it one Africa, very well united.
In 1976, it caught us unprepared. We were still building up on mass mobilization and building up on our armed struggle. But we found ourselves unable to respond to this brutality. After that, the struggle was at a new level.
Em frente do escritório da Frelimo,
Opposite
ao lado oposto,
Mozambican head
estava lá o escritório do ANC.
was ANC headquarters.
Estava lá o escritório da PEC.
It was PEC headquarters.
Estava lá o escritório do Partido Comunista da África do Sul. 3.
This party was also there.
Estava a UNIP.
It was UNIP.
Estava a Seychelles. Estava o escritório dos Comores. Estava a MPLA.
MPLA.
Todos nós ali, movimentos da libertação.
So all the liberation movements were there.
E ali vivíamos assim.
That's where we live.
We
always had meetings together where we will discuss tactics, how we could conduct the war and get independence in our region. Unity was the biggest force, driving force we had. And we did everything to fight against tribalism, racism, and any other phenomenon that could divide us. We were very strict against those three phenomena. The objective was not only to unite Mozambicans, were to unite all the colonized people. Well, the truth is that the South African government at the time, the apartheid government, managed to come into Mozambique and attack the locations where ANC was in Matola, but also bombed factories that had nothing to do with ANC. It was purely Mozambican. They came with the aviation, very low flight. They bombed the targets that they aimed. We also understood that it was normal. They were in a war. But the fact is that we wouldn't simply stop fighting until all the Africa was independent. Mozambique wouldn't feel free while South Africa was still under the apartheid government. Or the Jan Smith regime was ruling in South Rhodesia. We wouldn't feel free. One day, Mandela president said one thing,
E todos nós temos medo.
that we all have
O ser
fear.
humano tem medo.
The
O que
human being
acontece é que
have
o ser
fear.
humano é capaz de sobrepor-se ao medo.
The only thing is that, the most important thing is that human can overcome that fear.
Daqui da região, para discutir questões partidárias, como os partidos todos se funcionam.
There is normally meetings where we discuss issues that has to do with our parties. If there's a problem in the region, Frelimo, ANC, and others meet to discuss those and find a way forward.
Vivíamos no mesmo bairro, os camaradas do ANC.
We lived in the same neighborhood with ANC comrades, and we had a very good relationship.
Nessa altura estava o camarada Nkobi, não sei qual é o primeiro nome.
That time there was Mr. Nkobi, or comrade Nkobi, and he was representative of ANC in Lusaka.
Afro-Scandinavian Youth Conference, where I met for the first time OR, Oliver Tambo. In that meeting, there was a lot of criticism against the ANC because they were saying that ANC didn't want to fight for the liberation against apartheid. But PAC, yes, they wanted to fight and they wanted an armed struggle. And so there were two currents, some defending the ANC and others condemning the ANC. Those who were defending the ANC, they were saying, no, they are right because they have no conditions to fight in an armed struggle because they don't have a real base. So they have to wait for the independence of Mozambique in order to be able to fight. Or they have to wait for the independence of Namibia or for the independence of Zimbabwe and so on. I remember that then I jumped on the stage. I proved them all wrong. Said, well, the struggle to succeed is not fought from outside. The success of the struggle is in what you do inside. The strength of ANC is inside. They will find their way. They will find their. We may depend on them because the ANC was created before any liberation movement in this region. So they didn't wait for us to be free, so that they created that movement. The Lutulis, they were there. The Dumanopes, they were there. The GB, Max, they were there long time ago, 1912. So they don't have to wait for us because they have started their struggle. We have to get inspired by them. So anyway, even if the ANC wanted to take the armed struggle, do you think that it's a good thing to come and sing that we are going to launch an armed struggle? I don't think that this what the PAC is doing is the correct thing. They should be quiet, organize, whisper to us, and then have the bomb to explode from within. So everybody appreciated this. Of course, the extremists continued to shout, and OR at the end went to congratulate me, and so we started knowing each other.
We are brother parties.
Nós somos partidos irmãos. Bem, o Samara quando saiu daqui, o avião que entrou, foi o avião do ADC,
For example, President Samora, when he left here, he went on an ANC flight to Tanzania.
Por isso, a unidade, tanto nacional como de nós todos, para nós é a arma fundamental. Por isso, quando a Frelimo se criou, a primeira arma que pegamos é a questão da unidade nacional.
Unity is the fundamental tool or key tool. Even when Frelimo was founded, it was on the aim that the unity is the most important thing that they had to follow.
O que fez com que nós tivéssemos a vitória não é questão da arma.
What made us victorious is not the army, it's not the guns,
Foi a questão da unidade.
it was the unity.
Mesmo que na região algumas coisas, alguns combates que fazíamos, recebíamos através de outros camaradas que não são moçambicanos, mas pertencem a este globo colegial que éramos todos nós, africanos que estão a lutar aqui na região. Recebemos informação de outros companheiros que o lugar tal acontece. Não fazemos ação. Combatemos juntos no passado e combatemos juntos no dia.
Some of the acts that we had during the war were informations that were shared by the neighboring countries, and we would act because we had intelligence from them. So it's important, and it's still important, the relationship between the neighboring countries and Mozambique.
Portanto, nesta casa que é a casa da Frelimo,
For example, in this house that we call it the Frelimo house,
estamos unidos com o nosso partido irmão que se chama ANC.
you're united with the ANC, which is our
O
brother,
partido mais antigo na região.
which is one of the oldest party in the region.
Nós nos orgulhamos, porque o ANC é um partido muito mais, tem muita mais experiência. Nós nascemos depois do ANC.
We are proud
Nunca vamos abandonar o ANC.
because we are part of the ANC. We were formed many years after ANC, and we cannot continue living without them.
Percepção de que para vencermos o colonialismo português
And also the perception that we asked to win over the colonial power,
todo o povo moçambicano se reuniu.
it was important that everyone was united.
Equality. And so we had the common ground, but some would give more emphasis to the color to define the enemy. In Frelimo, we're saying colonialism has got no color. So the ordinary people would not understand that the white man is not an enemy, you know. So we had to work hard to say we are fighting against discrimination, we should not discriminate. The color counted a lot in the definition of the enemy. In Zimbabwe, the same thing. Sometimes we would argue with some Zimbabwean comrades who were saying, oh, you know nothing. Here for us is this whites must go.
Almost all of us, ANC members, were using the same passports. When you come back from a particular country, that passport will be taken, and then they will take out the photo, your photo, and then it would be reused by another person, the same passport.
When I went for training in Soviet Union, we were supposed to not to be known that we are going there, because the Portuguese should know whatever they would know, but not exactly what was happening. So my group were the second group to go to the Soviet Union. The first group was of 5 people, and my group was of 12. And so we gave nicknames to everybody. My name was John. And we chose this not to forget, because Batavele is Chisano, Tongandi is Chisano. So it was easy to memorize.
Sim, o colonialismo inglês.
I would say yes.
Por exemplo, na educação, era muito diferente do colonialismo português.
For example, the English colonial ruling, mainly in the way that they look at education, were completely different where the Portuguese colonial ruling.
O inglês dizia, olha, não se misture conosco.
The English will say that you don't have to mix with us,
Mas estudem.
but study.
Daí que no Zimbábue, desde o tempo colonial, já não havia analfabetos.
For example, in South Rhodesia, Zimbabwe, even on colonial ruling, there was no illiteracy.
No Malawi, praticamente não havia analfabeto.
In Malawi, the same.
Toda a gente sabia ler e escrever.
Everyone knew how to read and write.
Quando nós proclamamos a independência em 75,
In 75, when the Mozambican proclaimed its
em
independence,
Moçambique havia 93% de analfabetos.
93% of Mozambicans were illiterate.
South Africa will be transferred to a country of all South Africans, of all races and creeds. That is inescapable.
It is desirable, almost imperative, that the government should talk to the ANC. To the people of South Africa, I would say, we all belong to South Africa. South Africa belongs to all of us. And those who accept this premise must come closer together and shoulder to shoulder work hard for the elimination of apartheid.
The majority must rule. And here there's a common ground among the liberation movements, is that the majority must rule. One man, one vote.
In fact, it was always preferred by the ANC that we should prepare ourselves for tomorrow. In case we get our freedom, we need to take up government. So it was a strategy by the ANC to prepare us young people to govern the country in case we got our freedom. So the studying was very, very, very important for the ANC to prepare for the future, to govern.
Today, the youth has got the technology in their hand. We also have universities in every single province today. Frelimo had defined things to take care. We wanted to the book, the hole, and the arm on the gun. These used to work and they still work today. We freed the country with our guns. It's important that we read and it's important that we produce.
What we fought for them to have a very decent future. But when I see a lot of young people loitering in the streets, taking drugs, alcohol and all that, it really pains me. And it goes back to the issue that I mentioned earlier on, that all of us as citizens in this country, we need to take responsibility to guide our kids. And the leadership part of it is very, very important. The leadership of this country needs to stand up and do something about it. Because it's like a house that has got no father, no head. That house is bound to be doomed. So we need strong leadership, we need active citizenry, we need to stand up, and you don't take your child to a school and think that the school is going to take care of your child. We need to start from home. Teach your kids from home as a parent, and once we do that, we work together. I think we can take this country forward. We can do away with a lot of decay that we see in our streets.